Here we go. Hello, everybody. This is Parshas Mikeitz. I find myself on the last night of Hanukkah. Zos Hanukkah, the 8th day of Hanukkah, is a very holy day, a very special day, a day of miracles, and may we see those miracles very clearly this day. Parshas Mikeitz, we have once again dreams. Last week, we had lots of dreams. The Parsha began with Yosef's 2 dreams that his brothers were not very happy about, and they ended up throwing him into, you can't hear me, oh gosh, I'm going to talk a little louder. Let me know, please message again if it's still hard to hear. So last week, we began the Parsha with Yosef's dreams, and we ended the Parsha with the dreams of the chief butler and chief baker, in which Yosef interpreted their dreams, but he was still stuck in the dungeon in prison at the end of last week's Parsha. In the beginning of this week's Parsha, we yet again have more dreams. This time, these are Paro's dreams. Again, 2 dreams. And the dreams are of the 7 cows, the 7 fat cows and the 7 lean cows. And then we have the, he has another dream of 7 fat grains of wheat and 7, just muting people, and then 7 lean grains of wheat, bundles of wheat. And he's looking for an interpreter. What do these dreams mean? Because he has the 7 fat cows and the 7 lean cows, and then the 7 lean cows consume the 7 fat cows. And the same thing, the parallel dream happens with the bundles of wheat, in which the lean ones consume the fat ones. And he goes around to all the best dream interpreters of the time, and yet nobody is able to satisfy him. Nobody says an interpretation in which Paro goes, yes, that's it. That makes sense. Until the chief butler says, oh, I remember when I was in jail, there was an interpreter there, and maybe he can help you. And his interpretation is, who is that? Of course, it's Yosef. Yosef is taken out of prison. He is clean shaven, he's given a haircut, cleaned up, given a haircut. My mom is here in person. We're so happy to have you here. He's cleaned up, given new clothing, brought to the king, interprets the dream, and Paro is satisfied. What is his interpretation? His is that there will be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. And then he continues and he says, what you should do is you should take from the 7 years of plenty, store food away, keep it for the 7 years of famine, so that when you have the 7 years of famine, you will have what you need because you saved it from the 7 years of plenty. And Paro is ecstatic. He says, yes, this is the correct interpretation. This must be it. And he not only is happy with Yosef, he turns him into a viceroy, the second in command to the king, in charge of the entire empire, and especially in charge of carrying out this plan. The Lubavitcher Rebbe asks such an interesting question on this. He says, how did Yosef have the chutzpah to offer advice? That was not what he was called to do. He was told to offer an interpretation of the dream. So, okay, 7 cows, the 7 fat cows mean 7 years of plenty, and then the 7 lean cows mean 7 years of famine. How come Yosef offered advice to the king, unsolicited advice? So the Lubavitcher Rebbe points out that it was not unsolicited advice, but rather Yosef's genius was in recognizing that the solution to the problem was right there in the dream as well. And the reason Paro liked his interpretation as opposed to everybody else's was because nobody else could speak to one piece of the dream that made no sense. What was it? Yes, if you have 7 years of famine, and then afterwards you have seven years of plenty, and then afterwards you have 7 years of famine, okay, but then the dream should have been you have 7 fat cows, then those go away, and you have 7 lean cows. What didn't make sense to Paro is that you had them side by side. You had them together at the same time. How is it possible to have famine and plenty simultaneously? How can you have the fat cows and the lean cows side by side? And therefore the other interpretations, such as you will have 7 daughters and then they will die, didn't make sense to Paro because, okay, that's chronological. But what about the fact that you have them side by side? So Yosef's interpretation spoke to that paradox, spoke to the fact that, yes, they're side by side to teach you what to do, to teach you that you should take from the years of plenty, store food away so that when you have the 7 years of famine, you are side by side with the years of plenty. You have plenty in a time of famine. And so that resolved the paradox for Paro. Paro is happy. Yosef's genius, Yosef's realization here was that the answer lies within the dream, that the paradox itself is the solution. With that, we're going to look into a deeper understanding, a deeper perspective on this whole idea of dreams. Because as mentioned, last week's Parsha, dreams, 2 sets of dreams. This week's Parsha, again, dreams. And in fact, if you look at the function of each of these dreams, they are each a stage in the process of Yaakov and his children, who were the Jewish people at the time, not yet the Jewish people as a nation, but the beginnings of the Jewish people, of them going into exile. Yosef has dreams. His brothers hate him. They throw him into a pit. He's sold and then sold into from hand to hand until he ends up in Egypt. He's in Egypt at that time in Egypt. So he encounters the dreams of the butler and the baker in prison. And they, in turn, well, not both of them, but the chief butler who survives, then is able to tell Paro when Paro has a dream that Yosef interpreted it. And therefore, he comes to help Paro and thus saving not only Egypt, but the entire world from famine, so that in this week's Parsha, when the famine takes place and the famine affects Yaakov and his sons presiding in the land of Israel, they know what they have to do. They have to go to Egypt, as did everyone in society back then, at that time, because it was the famine affected the whole world, the whole civilized society at the time. So Yaakov and his sons were also affected by the famine, and they needed to go purchase food in Egypt. So Yaakov sent his sons, and of course, because Yosef was there, in next week's Parsha, what we will have is, in the coming weeks, we'll have that all of the Shvatim, all of Yaakov's sons, together with Yaakov, will end up going down into Egypt. And then, of course, in just a few weeks, we'll have the book of Shemos, which begins the Jewish slavery in Egypt. So exile begins with dreams. Many dreams, not just one dream, but 2 dreams, 3 dreams, 4 dreams. What is with the dreams? Why are dreams so central to the beginning of exile, the beginning of the Jewish people going into a state of exile? And we know that the Egyptian exile was the first of the 4 exiles, and we're still in exile. We are in the 4th exile, the final exile. And so there must be something about dreams that can teach us about what it means to be in Galus. Galus means exile. So in fact, there is a very strong connection. What is that? You see, the prominent feature of a dream is that in a dream, and only in a dream, you have this ability for opposites to come together, for totally crazy, contradictory existences to appear simultaneously at once together in the dream. I'm sure you've experienced such a dream when you wake up and like, that was so weird. I had, I can't think of a dream right now, but somebody from this part of my life and a person from that part of my life coming together, that would never happen in real life, right? Or just things that you experience. It's just like, wow, that's so odd. That's like every dream, right? It's so odd. That could never happen. That is what a dream is when it takes opposites and it joins them together. For example, and this example is brought down in the Gemara actually, this famous example that in a dream, it is possible to have an elephant pass through the eye of a needle. Now don't think, oh, okay, so the elephant shrinks and it goes through the eye of the needle, or the eye of the needle widens, grows, and becomes big enough for the elephant. That's not how it works in a dream. In a dream, you can have an elephant that is the size of an elephant pass through the eye of a needle that is the size of an eye of a needle. And what's even crazier is that if you're dreaming this, you don't think twice. Like, oh, like that's just part of it. Only when you wake up, you're like, wait a minute, what just happened? That was weird, right? So in dreams, we're able to experience these wondrous, exceptional, strange things. This is what exile is. Exile is a time where we have things that don't make sense, things that don't add up. It cannot be, and yet it is. Now, what we've described to be a feature of this state of dreamlike, this state of dreaming, is that you don't realize that you're dreaming. So for many, many, many hundreds and thousands of years now, we've had the state of exile in which we don't even realize that we're dreaming. Things that occur that don't make sense, but you don't even notice that they're not making sense because you're in it. They appear natural, they appear normal, and so you don't think twice. Crazy things become normalized. But I'm going to add something here, because really in the Sikha, the talk of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that is here, he spoke about it in that way, that like, oh, in a dream, you don't even realize that it's happening. So in Galus and exile, when these crazy things are occurring and it feels normal, it feels like day-to-day, everyday life, and you don't even notice what's happening. I'm going to insert myself and say, I think that's changing. I think that we are so deep into Galus, or more like so at the end of Galus, so at the end of this state of exile, that it's actually starting to become obvious. The craziness that we see, the paradox in front of us that we're noticing in all aspects of life is beginning to become obvious. It's kind of like, I personally have had, this has happened to me at least once or twice, where in my dream, I thought to myself, this makes so no sense that I must be dreaming. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where we're at today. I mean, if you just look at American politics, where we've come today, and who our leaders are, and who we look up to, and the choices we have to make between one or the other, right? It really makes no sense. How have we gotten here? How have we come here? How could it be? And it's become normalized. Again, I think some of us are questioning it and being like, wait, this isn't normal. Something's crazy, something's off, right? But first of all, not everybody. And two, we have to stop and recognize that something is off. Yes, something is off. Or, I mean, it's become ever obvious since October 7th. Universities, right? Supposed to be teaching students, teaching the young people how to be upright citizens, moral, ethical people, and producing the total opposite of that. Such a lack of moral clarity that we see today makes no sense. Just the fact that people are so confused about the issue of Israel at all, the fact that you have to have YouTube videos explaining, like, do you realize this doesn't make sense? Like, do you realize that Israel is the highest of ethics and morals, and everything that Israel has given you, and everything that Israel is, and you're against it? Does that like make sense? There's this wonderful YouTube channel called PragerU, and they have a lot of those kind of videos, just trying to show the world like this doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense to be anti-Zionist. It doesn't make sense to be taking the pro-Hamas side. I mean, on October 8th and 9th, when the news came out, what happened? We thought that once and for all, oh, the world will understand. The world will get it. Once and for all, there will be clarity of what is good and what is evil. And yet somehow, people are still confused. How does that make sense? And the answer is it doesn't. It doesn't. Even just, the existence of the UN, what it should be and what it is, what it stands for, or it's supposed to stand for, and what it's saying. Just yesterday, the resolution that Israel should stop the war. Don't they realize that Israel is fighting this war for the world as much as it is for Israel? The Red Cross, what it's supposed to do, and what it didn't do since October 7th. So, I mean, I could go on and on, but I think we all understand that this year especially, now especially, it's becoming obvious what a paradoxical reality we are in. The dream is becoming so crazy that we're realizing that we're dreaming. I'll give you another paradox, a little bit of a deeper one. Since October 7th, the aftermath of October 7th, what was the reaction of the Jewish people worldwide? Unity, joy, dancing, getting together, singing, dancing, uniting, kindness. Shouldn't we be mourning? I mean, obviously we are mourning, and yet you see so much love and joy coming out of this. How could that be? How could that be our reaction? I heard Manis Friedman last night. I listened to the Meaningful People podcast that interviewed him, and he said the mood after the Yom Kippur War was Yom Kippur-like. It was very somber. The fact that there was a surprise attack, everyone was really taken aback, and there was a somber mood. It was Yom Kippur for a few months. He said, what was the mood after Simchas Torah, after Shmini Atzeres this year? Again, obviously the pain together with the joy. How could that be? How is it that we experience it? You've seen videos and videos and videos of soldiers dancing. Shouldn't they be more serious than anybody? And yet we saw videos of soldiers dancing and singing Am Yisrael Chai, and we got inspired to dance and sing. And then we sent those videos to them, and they got inspired from us, and it was a feedback loop. the Jewish people uniting in this powerful way. How could we so Manis Friedman pointed out that after Yom Kippur, it was Yom Kippur for a few months, and after Simchas Torah, it's Simchas Torah for a few months. We kept that joy alive. The deep point here I want to make is not just that, but the paradox of the ultimate paradox, I'll call it, the ultimate question of life, the ultimate question of exile. How could a good God have on October 7th? How, right? We had this question after the Holocaust, but you know what? We're a little removed. So it was very, it was high school girls asking in high school and wanting to know, how could God have made a Holocaust? But really the ones who were asking that were ones that had trauma in their own lives, and they're really asking, how can I have experienced what I've experienced? Today, we all feel it. We all feel that question. We all feel that question so powerfully. The paradox of God's love for the Jewish people and God being the epitome of goodness. That's who he is. And yet, how could it be that what happened? Not only is it God's love for us, but Shmini Atzeres is the holiday of God's love for us. It's the day after the 7 days of Sukkot, in which we're bringing karbanos, we're bringing sacrifices in reference to the nations of the world. And when we finish for the nations of the world, and when we finish that, God says, hold on there, don't go. Stay one more day, just me and you. Because I love you, because I want to be close with you. Shmini Atzeres is all about Hashem's love for the Jewish people. And that's the day. We can't understand these things, but that's the point. That we cannot reconcile it, but that's okay. That's okay. Because that is the state of exile, the state of Galus that we're in. Galus, by definition, is the hiddenness of God. That is the definition. The opposite of Galus is a state of the world in which God is revealed. Now, if God is good, that means that when God is revealed, it means his goodness is revealed. You know when like something good happened, you say, there's the hand of God, right? Well, the hand of God is all the time. Why do we only say it then? Because we recognize that God is truly ultimately good. So when we experience good, we say, there's a miracle, there's God. And when we're challenged, God is hidden. That is God being hidden. So the state of exile is the state of God's goodness being hidden. But more than that, because it's hidden, what we experience is this paradox that we cannot reconcile and doesn't add up and doesn't make sense to our mortal minds. I'm going to give you one more paradox, which is the spiritual paradox of Galus, which is our purpose in Galus. Our purpose in the world as a whole is to be, there's a podcast called Human and Holy, and they nailed it. That is our purpose, to be human and holy, to infuse godliness into mundane life, right? That's why God made the world, because he wanted to live in a human physical world with human physical people in a mundane world. That's our job. That's our entire job, is to infuse the mundane world with godliness, to bring holiness into physicality. That's what mitzvahs are, right? That's a mitzvah. A mitzvah is when we take something physical and we infuse it with holiness. A Jew, a Jewish person, in it of itself is a paradox. Because a Jew is a soul, and primarily a soul. Who we really are is our godly soul that each of us have. And yet, were put into a body. So the soul in a body, that is a Jew, is a paradox in of itself. We are walking paradoxes. And we are living a paradoxical life, trying to be holy while having to go to work and make money and buy food and do the dishes, right? We're raising holy children, but changing their diapers at the same time. Like that, what's so holy about changing a diaper? This is the paradox that we are living in. So why is it that paradox is so crucial? The answer is, in a paradox lies the infinite. If you have A or B, you're limited. If it's black or white, that's limitation. And if God is an unlimited, infinite God, he can't be boxed in to A or B, to black or white. So even saying God is spiritual is pushing him up to Shemayim, pushing him up to the heavens, to the spiritual reality, the spiritual world. Oh, he doesn't belong here. That's limiting him. So where we find the essence, the truest essence, I know this is getting a little deep here, but where we find the truest essence of God himself has to be within a paradox, within something that contradicts itself, within something that really doesn't add up together, doesn't make sense, and we can't understand how it works together. Because in that space, you have access to something so much deeper. If God is infinite, we can't grasp him. We can't possibly understand him. And that's why we are confronted with this paradoxical reality of being in a state of exile, again, a spiritual exile, and also, like we said before, this really confusing existence of life that is 2023. And there we have the infinite. There we can experience something deeper than I could understand with my human brain, that I can figure out on my own, that I can appreciate on my own. When we let go and realize that there's something deeper going on here. Yes, there's something I don't understand, but that's precisely because God is beyond understanding. And when we let go of our need to understand, really, and we let go of our need to reconcile, first of all, I'm already feeling relief. Like, there's so much relief in that. Yeah, American politics makes no sense. Yeah, the anti-Semitism in the world makes no sense. Yeah, the lack of moral clarity in the world today that we see makes no sense. But that's exactly what tells us that there is something deeper going on here. Anti-Semitism never made sense. As we said in a previous class, it's a halacha. It's a rule, as in it's a rule of life. It's the way that God created the world, right? At least in the times of Galus. What's the lesson here? First of all, I want to tie it back into Yosef's interpretation, where he looked at Paro's his dreams, and he saw that the answer was found in the dream itself. And not just in the dream, but in the paradox of the dream. The paradox was the solution. I think that the lesson, for me at least, is not to be afraid of paradox, but to lean into it, because that is where we find the infinite. That is where we find something deeper, a higher reality. If you want to take another lesson in this confusing state of paradox, there's no hierarchy of growth. We don't always have to go, in a way that makes sense. We can do things that make no sense. And not because we're senseless, not because we're stupid. This is a very important distinction that I feel needs to be made. When we talk about doing things outside of reason, outside of, making sense, people think of religious people, or is it, forget religious people, religion as a whole. Today, society thinks of religion as primitive. Why? Because it doesn't follow science. It doesn't follow sense. It doesn't follow the intellectual arena. But it's not because we're lower than intellect. It's because God is beyond intellect. God is above intellect, beyond. God created intellect. God created a world in which we have a mind and we understand. So if we can't understand sometimes, that shouldn't bother us. It's okay. And again, that's where you can experience the infinite. That's where you can experience something deeper. So if we want to do something sometimes to express our Judaism that doesn't really make sense, that's okay. Like having bigger Hanukkah displays this year at a time where there's more anti-Semitism. That doesn't make sense, but that is Judaism. That is what it means to be a Jew. All right, everybody, happy Hanukkah and have a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos.